Our next session is a fireside chat titled Computer Vision Pioneer and serial entrepreneur Jan Erik Solem will share insights into the roller coaster journey of starting and selling startups to Apple, Meta, and his next startup that he's working on now in the physical AI space. Jan Erik, we've known each other for a long time. I'm going to give you give the audience a little bit more background. Thrilled to have you here. He is the co-founder and CEO of Stær, and they are building robots that are truly autonomous. Actually, the software behind the robots to enable them to be fully autonomous, enable to map new environments, understand space, plan their movements, and continuous improve. Most recently, he was director of engineering at Maps at Meta, following the company's 2020 acquisition of his startup Mapillary. We at LDV were honored to be Mapillary's first investor in 2013. It's crazy. It was 13 years ago. Before that, he started a company called Polarose. Before that, it was a researcher and a professor, and it's going to be better to hear it from his words, not mine. We're also happy to have him as a LDV Capital expert in residence. Jan Erik, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Evan, for the nice introduction. Great to be here. I think I've been to all of these since you started the summits back in the day. And great to see everyone commenting. I love the comments. So thanks for the engagement. Looking forward to this conversation.
Fantastic. Anybody that has questions, please add them to the chat. It'll be interactive. Jan Erik will probably ask me challenging questions at some point, but I'll start it off with saying, so tell us a little bit, Jan Erik, in the early days, back when you were a computer vision researcher in academia and a professor at Lund University, how did you decide to go? There's probably many professors and researchers in our audience. How did you decide to kind of transition to be an entrepreneur and start Polarose in 2004?
Yeah.
A little scary. Was that far back, huh?
Yes. 2004 seems like a very long time ago today. But I don't know. I was always doing stuff on the side. I've always had lots of ideas all the time, but I think especially in my 20s when I was going through my graduate school days, and so I was doing like consultancy. I was like doing all sorts of things on the side, and then I think it was the trigger was like I had some research results on 3D shape models, and for some reason, this was back in the day when there weren't that many big data sets out there. And so one of the data sets I got my hands on was a data set of faces that was like faces captured from different angles. And so I ended up having that example over and over in a few papers. And then that turned into a face recognition system, but it was like purely like coincidence that it ended up being faces. So I started my company while I was wrapping up my PhD, and then after went full time on it.
So tell us a little bit about what the Polarose product was in the early days, and what was the perception of customers when you were saying what you were doing.
Yeah. So this was the company started late 2004. Really started getting momentum around maybe 2006, sort of peak Web 2.0. I saw Esther was in the crowd, and a few others from the Web 2.0 era. We were trying to do sort of consumer applications in the Web 2.0 theme of. So we were staying away from like security surveillance, which was the only place where that type of technology was being applied at the time. And so we tried to do. The first thing we built was a search engine. We crawled the web and sort of indexed people in pictures. That was a little creepy, actually, and eventually we pivoted into sort of photo tagging and organizing photos. And we started organizing photos on Flickr and in your Facebook albums, things like that. And eventually that turned into the acquisition by Apple, and we ended up organizing photos for iPhoto. But that was again. That was the vibe of the days, if you can remember that.
Sure. So back in those days, I mean, I think I remember you mentioning some potential clients or people we talked to had said, why would anybody want to tag photographs? No one's going to
Yeah.
use that. I mean, now it seems commonplace and makes sense, but why didn't they understand it back then in your mind? And what did you learn from that?
Um, I think a lot of people who come from a research background are a little bit early with their ideas sometimes, and I've definitely been guilty of that many times. And so, yeah, we did. I mean, we went to Facebook, which we had actually integrated with at the time. We went to Facebook, and they're like, no, no, no. Like, Facebook is all about manual tagging. We will never have any automated tagging on Facebook. And we went to Apple and actually pitched the team that ended up acquiring the company. But 3 years before they did that, they said the same thing. Like, no, we don't know what to do with this. Like, we demoed it on a Mac, but it's like, no, we don't know what to do. And then 3 years later, it was actually both Apple and Facebook had deployed it broadly by that point.
So it's a kind of a
So yeah.
challenge of being bleeding edge versus cutting edge or commoditization. So bleeding edge, and we always try to invest at LDV at the intersection of bleeding and cutting edge. That can be kind of commercial in a year or two. But I mean, how do when you think about, okay, tell us about your next company, Mapillary, after Apple. And so what did you learn from your Polar Rose days that you tried to do differently at Mapillary?
Um, yeah, maybe that thing about timing, right? So it's like, when is the right time to do something? And oh, I see we're getting questions. Great. Um, like, what is a good time for something? Like, when will people be ready to use this technology or use this product? And I think one of the things we learned during the time it was actually pretty cool. Like, at Apple, when we after the acquisition went through, and we joined the team on the inside, right? It's always a weird transition when you're talking to someone from the outside, and then all of a sudden you're on the inside. And because the reason why we joined was they did a big, like, a benchmark, a comparison over all the vendors that they could get to do this test, because they weren't happy with the solution they had before. And when we got to on the inside, we saw that we were the best solution. Like, we were number one in the benchmark. And that was like, I didn't really believe it until that point, that a small team we were 14 people at the time, uh, a small team from Europe, 14 people, first time entrepreneurs, first time, like, all of us were basically, this was our first job. And we were the best. And I think that was one of the main things that I carry from that time, was like, yeah, you could be anyone, anywhere, and you could be the best at something. And that was actually a very cool learning. The other,
That's a fast. Go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, no, no, go ahead.
I love that learning experience. And so, I mean, then when you started Mapillary, tell the audience what, in a sentence, what Mapillary product was, and how did you come up with that one? It's this kind of everybody always asks us, like, that are thinking about starting businesses, how to choose, and there's so many ideas, and when to start, and that kind of. So how did you kind of feel like after you left Apple? I remember those days. We had known each other for
Yep.
years already, but you were kind of iterating ideas, and then all of a sudden this one, you got excited about, and I said, we'd love to invest and partner. But how did you kind of work through the projects, and how did it become this one?
Yep. It was actually also at the tail end of my time at Apple, I got exposed to how mapping companies, or companies building maps, were collecting their data. And just like, the most famous example is like Google Street View vans that you see driving around with like big cameras and stuff on the roof. And ultimately, it's like, as I started looking into it, it's like, this is completely unscalable, super expensive, and there has to be a better, more scalable way of doing it. And around that time, when I started looking into this, the iPhone just had the one that came just before had a GPS for the first time. The cameras were getting good enough. I think they were 5 megapixel at the time, like the latest iPhone. And so, well, actually, pretty soon, almost everyone is going to have the necessary equipment to do what these vans do in their pockets or in their purses as they're walking around doing whatever they do. And so the idea was just to open up, let people contribute, crowdsource basically Street View, and then with the help of computer vision, combine all those images together so that you could visually explore a place and move around, but also extract map data and build like semantic maps from it. And so that was the trigger, really. Like it felt like pretty soon this hardware is going to be in everyone's pocket, and you could sort of shortcut the whole expensive, slow data collection side.
And so keep asking questions in the audience, folks. We're going to wait a little bit until towards the end to gather the different questions to ask Jan Erik, and we'll just keep going for a bit, he and I. And so that was like the aha moment. And so then how did you, I mean, tell us a little bit more, like as it grew, it was quite a crowdsource, people everywhere. And so what was the learning experience on kind of empowering crowdsourcing and that kind of unique situation you guys had there?
Yeah, I mean, I think I had a hunch that it would work, right? Like no one had done this before, and so we didn't really know. Well, is the GPS going to be good enough? Will the images be good enough? Can you stitch them together and like make it look good? No one had done this before, so actually the first thing I did was that summer after I left Apple, I built the first iPhone app, built the first prototype, and I went out with two friends on a cold Sunday morning, and we mapped the harbor area here in Malmo, Sweden, where I'm right now. And I looked at the result of like what came out of the pipeline, out of the machine, and it looked great. It looked amazing, actually. And so that was like, okay, you can do this technically. And then the big question was, would people actually do this, right? Like no one had given people a tool like this before, and would people really contribute images anywhere in the world without getting paid and just like uh, participate in that community effort? And there was no way to find out in the lab, so we just had to launch it and see what happened. But the first test was actually just building a prototype and going outside.
And I think I remember just getting an email saying, "Hey, we just did it. Hey, why don't you make some pictures in New York City and join?" I said, "What? How? What do you mean? Why are we doing this?" And then I got hooked. And I think I have some numbers here, but correct me if I'm wrong. Did it get to, I don't know if it was towards just before the acquisition, but how many contributors and how many countries and how many images did it get to, if you remember?
I mean, it's still running, right? So like Meta
Sure.
acquired it in 2020, and it's been growing and doing really well. The community is super healthy. 3 billion images to date. I think it was just over a billion when we were acquired.
Right.
In every country. It was kind of funny. We had Street View in North Korea, which I don't know who captured those images or if they should be on the platform, but it was kind of fun to see, actually. Yeah, I mean, all in all, it's I think a few 100,000 total contributors, but on any given month, it was single digit thousands is enough. And as you know, with all crowdsource activities, there's a very steep power distribution where there are a few people that contributes a lot on a daily or weekly or monthly basis.
Cool. And so you shared some of the learnings from Polar Rose. Now, what do you think we can kind of, what were the biggest learning at Mapillary that then you want to do differently as we start talking about this next startup that you're working on?
I think I mean, there were a lot of interesting learnings sort of on the community dynamics and the fact that people actually did all of this and still do all of this for free. No one gets paid, but they're sort of self-motivated. They're trying to solve a problem, but by doing that, they're also helping others who are trying to solve, because like all the images go into one repository and shared with everyone. And so there were a lot of learnings on sort of the community dynamics and sort of user growth side. Um, and I think also technically, like we had, I think, just over 4,000 different types of cameras that we calibrated and like all of that stuff. So managing like uncoordinated data collection at large scale and like making sense of that data was actually something that we brought both to Meta, but then also now to what we're building at Stær. So I guess those are some of the learnings that we bring with us.
And great. And one last question, just from Mapillary. What was the, kind of the amazing success of gathering, crowdsourcing, gathering the data, and doing the imaging to stitch it all together? But what was a couple of the kind of customers in that period that were leveraging this data, which actually relates probably to what the new company, and because it's not just the amazing technical advancements that you and the team did, but just give some maybe in the audience that might not clearly understand, well, what are the use cases on a commercial side, and then why did Facebook get so excited not only of the great team, but what was the use case they wanted it for, if you can share that on a high level.
Yeah. So at a high level, so you have this platform where anyone can contribute imagery in with any camera, and we combine all those images together. We recognize objects in the images, turn that into map data, and then the images in the map data is available on the platform. And so we had individuals, we had like various interest groups, we had cities, local governments, we had mapping companies. All of them were sort of participating in this global machinery. And on the customer side, it was typically cities, state level DOTs, big tech companies, mapping companies. They're the ones who were licensing the data, and that's how we like Meta was, or Facebook back in the day was a user and contributor to the platform, and so that's how we made that connection the first time, and how we ended up getting acquired by Meta eventually.
Perfect. One last question from Mapillary, and we'll move on. So a lot of entrepreneurs in our audience, some are funded, some are raising capital. You've had Polar Rose and then Mapillary, and you raised several rounds at Mapillary. Give kind of behind the scenes. What was it like raising your seed A and B, and what did you learn from doing that? To the extent that you can share, just from in those days, there was less probably big funds in Europe, and things have changed a bit, but there were big funds, and so give a little insights from when we first invested, and then how'd you raise the seed and B, A and B?
Yeah. Yeah, it's always interesting. Like every fundraising journey is slightly different, and it sort of depends on on what kind of help and support you need in those early days. And when we started out, so as I mentioned, we didn't even know if people would do this, and the only way to find out was to launch the service and see if it picks up, and it did, right? But we didn't know when we started, so it was me and three other co-founders. We decided we're going to bootstrap it. I self-funded it for the first 14, 15 months because we needed to see if this was even, like, if it even worked, like the dynamics, the social dynamics of it, before we raised any money. So we did like a year of bootstrapping before we had enough data to show like there was like a nice hockey stick in terms of growth. And it's like, yeah, okay, this thing works. And then we actually started looking for funding. And the first thing we did was looking at what help do we need? And we needed help with a lot of different things, from like licensing imagery to like all sorts of different things. So we thought, okay, let's bring in some angels that know some of the things that we don't know. And we got them in first, along with you, of course, Evan. And then Sequoia ended up leading that round pretty quickly. And you made that connection to Roloff at Sequoia.
It was like 9 days from first call to term sheet or something like that after you met Roloff. I mean, I didn't do it. It's you and the team that inspired him, but I, at least made the introduction.
Yeah. We spoke on the phone when I was in my in-law summer house for about an hour. And then he surprised me with a partner meeting on the Monday after. And then on the Wednesday, it was basically.
Oh, that's right. The second call he scheduled with you, but you didn't. And then what was it like? Wasn't it? You didn't know? I thought it was just going to be him, and all of a sudden, all the partners showed up.
Yeah, I don't know. I was. It was a Monday evening for me in Europe. I was in the zone. I was working on stuff. I wasn't really paying attention, and then I joined the call, and then when the video came on, I was, oh yeah, it's Monday, partner meeting. It didn't even occur to me. So that was kind of fun actually. I think it went well, and they ended up leading the seed. And then we had great investors. Atomico and Nicholas Sandström led the Series A. And then we got even more amazing people in, and some strategics from Samsung and BMW at the end. So um, yeah,
Love
I
it.
think that was the fundraising journey for Mapillary.
Okay, now let's jump into your new journey, the new
Mm-hmm.
startup, and tell us how what is Stær, and who are you working on with this, and kind of how did this come about since you've left Meta?
Yeah, yeah. The the founders, the founding team is we brought the gang back together. So it's Carl, who was Polarosa's CEO up to the Apple acquisition. It's my co-founders, the three I mentioned before, my co-founders of Mapillary, Johan, Yubin, and Peter, and then Pao, who was our first hire at Mapillary. So um, I'm I'm aiming to grow the co-founder base additively with each company. So next time it's going to be even more than six. Who knows? Um, but yeah, it's that was and I mean we all worked together many years. Some of us in more than one company together before, and yeah, and the vision was just to provide this world understanding of physical sites, coordination for mixed robot fleets in these sites based on the learnings that we did from building large scale maps with Mapillary, and then from building 3D mapping for the VR product line at Meta, and a few other things we did there. So that was the start. It was September last year.
Cool. And the use case, talk to us about one or two key use cases from on the perception side that you're focusing on now, and if you can share any more details of any pilots or anything that you're working on. But I know
Mm-hmm.
it's still quite quiet. But can you give the audience a little example of where you're starting? Because obviously, perception for robots is a gigantic, exciting sector.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I mean, there's a lot of stuff happening, and if you just put the label robotics, that is a lot of stuff happening every day. So we're basically zooming in on the part that applies to mobile robots. So, and we're zooming in on the software side. So you can sort of like carve out some of that very large space. And basically, our thesis is that pretty soon we're going to have multi-robot, multi-form factor robots coexisting in a lot of cases with humans in the same physical space. And for them to move around and coordinate effectively, they need to have the same understanding of the space. So that's where the 3D mapping and they need to have the same understanding of where objects are. So some of the things that we did at Meta for like scanning rooms and semantics and like tracking objects comes in, and they basically need like that shared information layer. So it's like a spatial intelligence layer and a coordination layer that comes automatically out of that. But from a technical perspective, it's actually very similar to what we did at Mapillary and Meta, sort of large scale, like continuous mapping.
Okay, and so what do you look at as one of the biggest challenges of this kind of next generation mapping platform that is exciting you? And on the flip side, does the commercial side is it obvious to them that they need this now? And kind of what are you seeing without giving away any too many specifics?
Yeah. I mean, we what we're building is sort of, I mean, we're not only agnostic to what camera you use and what robot you're using, but also like I think it's agnostic to what sector you apply it to. We're focusing right now and probably for all of 2026 on warehouses and logistics, which is maybe the most mature of all of these verticals. But I would say across all of them, every single company we talk to, they're thinking about automation. They're thinking about how can we put more AI in our processes? How can we put machines to solve some of the physical labor? And there are a lot of things that are sort of driving that need. It's in a lot of cases labor shortages. In a lot of cases, it's like lowering the OpEx. in a lot of cases, it's like increasing efficiency. Consumers are demanding faster deliveries and things like that. And so basically, everyone that we talk to that's sort of in that space, they're on a journey to automation. Some of them are fast, some of them are slow, but given like if you look at it from a 5-year time span, all of them are going to go through that transition.
Makes a lot of sense, and that's what's interesting is that the kind of thinking back to your Polar Rose days of like this is obvious to you and I agree, and sometimes the customers they still don't know yet when or how they need something like this, but the world is getting these days the innovation and speed of AI and other software advancements is happening so fast, but is it really happening that fast on the customer side of the robotics, or is it still quite slow and it's going to take years to modernize?
I mean, it depends on what you compare against, but it's happening faster than it's ever done in the
Right.
past. And I think, like, if you go back just 2-3 years and you look at what robotic solutions were deployed, they're ancient today, and so like it is accelerating also in that space, but maybe not as fast as like the clawbots of the world. It's maybe a
which is
different time
which is
scale.
which is happening at a different speed. I mean,
Yes.
I've spoken to a bunch of engineering entrepreneurs recently, or very technical entrepreneurs, and some of them are very excited about the increase in speed and innovation, and some of them are very worried or scared. Not scared, but kind of saying everything's happening so fast it has to be kind of rebuilt, the infrastructure so quickly, or the fear of that.
Yep.
How do you feel
Yep.
about, because you've been doing this for years and now you see this kind of the new evolution now. How do you feel about it, and how do you kind of manage your own and team's expectations of that?
Yeah, I mean, I have the same observation. The pace is insane today. It's even like in the little niche that we work on, we find new state-of-the-art results every week, and it has never been like that. We used to be in the Mapillary days, we were super proud that we were basically re-architecting our solution once a quarter because like we were growing, we were hitting different scalability problems, and we were so proud that we were like rewriting stuff, changing everything every quarter. Now it's like we're changing things like almost every week, and then sort of have to keep up with the developments. It happens across the board on like core like computer vision things, infrastructure things, tooling. Um, Everything is just moving at a crazy pace. Personally, I love it. I have never had as much fun as I've had the last 6 months building Stær with. I mean, we try to adopt all of the new things, and it's a little crazy sometimes, but it's. I mean, some of the signs that I think are, if you compare now to the way things used to be, like work happens in the open right now. There's a great ecosystem where research results are being published quickly, open source, open data sets, and it's actually a lot of positive signs that go with this breakneck speed that I think is encouraging for everyone who's out there building.
That's very positive. What would concern you the most? What would you advise, even during this new learning of the pace, the speed, on a better level? What's the advice to other entrepreneurs that are trying to figure it out?
I mean, some things are universal, right? It's like staying curious, staying positive, and sort of surrounding yourself with good people. It's always been important, but maybe even more now. Like, don't lose your curiosity and your ability to learn and adapt is maybe extremely relevant right now. And maybe it's like that adaptability is more important than the knowledge you have today, because the knowledge you have today is it's not going to be great 6 months from now.
Right, right. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, audience, why don't you add a couple questions in there, and the next kind of section, we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of different learnings, and if Jan Erik at any time can ask me questions, but let's answer some questions from the audience. We've got about 5 to 6 minutes left, and we'll take it from there. So I'll ask the kind of next one. Um, Relating back to Mapillary and Stær, like Mapillary, you were really ahead of the game on virtual teams. And
Yep.
I was a thing we always talked about a lot. And I loved like this story. Sometimes you even hired some people, didn't you, to be senior people that you had never met in person. So tell us a little bit
Oh
about
yeah.
your philosophy at Mapillary. And I have a feeling it's the same now, but now it's more accepted. So what was it then, and how have you evolved it now to kind of help inspire the audience to figure out what's right for them?
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, we were, I guess, pretty early on the remote team setup, and I mean, even my first company, we had three offices. We had Warsaw, Poland, and Nice, France. Um, just because like we couldn't get the talent we needed in well, southern Sweden, where I happen to live, and but in the Mapillary case, what actually triggered it was one of my co-founders was moving to Los Angeles, and we're like, okay, yeah, well, I guess we try remote and we see how it goes. And so from day one, we were actually in two time zones and remote, and we just built the company that way. And so we ended up having two bigger clusters of people. We had a very anti in office culture. So like there should never be an advantage of coming to one of those two sites. Like everyone should have the same level playing field. And
But
so I think we
isn't
did
that
that
also a
really
challenge?
well. Yeah.
Isn't that also a challenge? I mean, that playing field, I agree. But some of the companies that start off in person and then maybe have one or two, or have five or six in one place and one or two remote, the one or two sometimes feel like they're not a part of it, or they're
Yeah.
not in the cliche around the water cooler or going out for lunch and chit chatting in between. So how did you solve for that? Or was it
Yeah.
just because everybody was virtual in the beginning, it was just natural, and but there was also a virtual communication style that you probably perfected
Yeah.
or refined then that you're leveraging now?
Yeah, yeah, and yes, we are using the same playbook now again because, well, now people moved, and now my co-founders are in four different locations in different countries. So we're applying the same playbook again. But yeah, no, sort of that middle ground is not so good, right? Like if you have a an in-office culture with a few people remote, it's not great for the people who are remote. And so it's more about setting up, like making sure you always communicate in public, you over communicate. And what's actually great is that if you're also in different time zone, you're sort of forcing yourself to be asynchronous in your communication, where I kind of like that. It becomes super efficient where you're just like handing over work to people and then you work like a few hours and you do something else and then you work again. It's sort of like, it's not like go to the office, like have some kind of commute, sit in the same room for 8 hours and then commute again. It becomes much more fluid and dynamic, and like I kind of like that way of working.
I love it. And I mean, obviously, it's a consistency. It's worked in the past, so I'm sure it's going to continue working. But I do see a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with that across our portfolio, and they're trying to figure out because also there's a balance of who's the smartest for and the domain expertise for a specific role. Also, there's affordability in the early days. Where are people that are brilliant? And it might be more expensive to hire people in Silicon Valley or New York or Boston or London.
Yep.
But the ability that also on a lifestyle choice, as you said earlier, people can work remote. We've got 1,000 RSVPs and several hundred listening to us now from around the world and benefiting
Mm,
from this.
exactly.
I mean, we used to do this, as you know, in the early days for the first 6 or 7 years of the summit in person, 2 days. It was a grand whirlwind, and we loved it in person, but not as many people could travel to it. So this balancing act of in person versus 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 virtual.
Yep.
What now talk about this kind of your daily kind of who inspires you the most every single day? Like it's a roller coaster life, the title, and we've done this before, at Mapillary, and you've been doing it over the years, but it's got to be a challenging ups and downs. And so like who inspires you every day?
Yeah, I mean, I would say my co-founders. I mean, not only
That's
are they
perfect.
a great group of people, but they sort of had the right. mentality for 2026. Like they're constantly learning, they're constantly growing. I mean, we're all a senior group of we're not senior citizens yet, but we're a senior group of people who, like, we've been around, we built stuff, but every day they wake up and it's like, how can I use the new things that came out while I was sleeping? Like, it's sort of like adapting the new and constantly learning, and that inspires me. Inspires me a lot.
Cool. Next question. Look forward, which is kind of hard. We were talking earlier about the innovation speed. In 20 years, what's the visual technology that you wish existed today, but you can't wait until it exists in 20 years? What's that holy grail kind of use case or technology that you can't wait until it exists, whether or not it's exactly 20 or roughly 20?
When it comes to imaging, computer vision,
Yeah.
LDV stuff, I mean, a lot of things are still bottlenecked by physical constraints, right? Like you need power, you need connectivity, you need like a certain battery and weight, and sort of like there's a reason why like you can't put all of the cool stuff on your glasses today, and there's a reason why it's like those cameras and sensors are not everywhere and communicating all the time. But I mean, if you look 20 years into the future, I think all of those things will have been solved somehow, right? And so so then I think it's going to be everywhere, embedded, lightweight, efficient, and we're not going to be sending like gigabytes of data to the data center that requires its own nuclear power plant next to it to process it. It's just going to like we will hopefully have solved some of the physics to make that like completely distributed and everywhere.
Cool. That was a question from one of our attendees in the audience. The other question was about virtual, and so we kind of answered their questions and ours at the same time. We're about ending. I want to end on one last sentence of advice. We talked about advice earlier, in education. It's like for the deep tech researchers out there that back when you were doing it, what is what your one sentence advice to help inspire them if they want to start a business, how to do it?
It's a good question. I mean,
I get lucky sometimes.
Try. I mean, if you really want to, like, if you're thinking about trying, if you really want to, like, see if what you're working on can become a business, I think the only way is just to try it, give it a shot, and have a point of view. Surround yourself with good people, and like don't obsess over the competition or what big tech companies are doing. Just have a point of view and try it.
I love it. Jan Erik, thank you very much. Thank you from all of our attendees.
Evan.
If you can stick around, maybe answer some questions in the chat. I'm going to pass it to Ross to make the introduction for our next speaker. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.